Intro chat with Merrill's live, digging deep where techs thrive. From the latest hacks to cool updates, join the ride, don't be late.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Entra Chat. Chetan is one of the very first people I asked when I was going to start the podcast whether he'd be willing to come on. Sort of validated my idea about, starting the podcast itself. And I'm super glad to have Chetan here. He's the person who knows a lot about provisioning, creating users, anything you talk about, getting identities into Entra and then provisioning it in the other direction. Chetan knows. And there are parts of Entra that I didn't even know existed until Chetan sort of showed me as well. So this is a topic that I feel there are lots of Entra admins who never see this side of Entra much at all. So we are going to be talking about lots of identities and the core of Entra and how things get into Entra and so on. Chetan, you want to just tell us about what you do?
Sure. Happy to share that. Hi everyone. My name is Chetan Desai, and I have been part of the Entra identity governance team, provisioning team for the past 7 years now. And it's been a great journey with this team. And I've been working on a lot of different types of provisioning integrations. In fact, just to give a little bit of background, prior to this role, I was for almost 17 years into consulting and in the identity access management domain. So a lot of background of actually deploying and integrating stuff really went into this product management track path as well.
You've done a lot before on, I think, SAP and all of that,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been working a lot on that. In fact, I still recall, just when I try to connect the dots. So this was way back in probably 2005, 2006, when I was getting just started into the consulting role. And one of the as interviewing for one of those positions with a customer, and they were doing this huge modernization project at that time.
Right.
So they were getting off some homegrown system and planning to deploy Sun Access Manager or Sun Identity Manager and all of it, right? And the question asked to me is, hey, what are you going to do? Like, what's the first step you're going to do in this project, right? And I said, oh, we'll take a inventory of all your applications and then see how users access them and accordingly start working on, bringing the applications into your single sign-on initiative. And that's when the person actually said, no, there's something even more important that you need to do before that. And that is provisioning of users from the HR system into that IDP platform, whatever it is, right? So that really stayed with me for a long time. Oh yeah, identity seeding is much more important as the first thing you want to solve, or what I'll call as the first mile problem.
Right.
Okay. For any identity governance administration project, IGA project, modernization project, you want to first solve the problem of how identities get into the IGA platform through HR provisioning. And then after that, okay, you do all the fancy role mapping, access mapping.
Yes.
And then you have the last mile problem of how do you push all those enforcements into your applications, different applications and systems. So that's the outbound provisioning part.
Right. When the user finally accesses the application, right?
Yes. So it's interesting how all of this actually came together into my product management role at Microsoft.
Nice. It's fascinating. With the identity, I think for most people listening, they're used to, okay, we just install Entra Connect Sync. It just brings all the identities into Entra. But this is a step before, right? Like, how did it even get into on-prem AD in the first place?
Yes. Absolutely. That's such a great point, right? I mean, I think a majority of customers who use Entra have have, as you mentioned, are using Entra Connect Sync or Cloud Sync to pull identities from AD into Entra. But even before that, you want to see, okay, how will those identities get into AD? So that is where part of the integrations which I worked on at Microsoft come into play. Specifically the Workday to Entra ID provisioning and SuccessFactors to Entra ID provisioning, and the whole bucket that we refer to as HR-driven inbound provisioning.
Right. Yeah. So when I first started working with Entra, like those were the only things that were there, which is like if you wanted to bring an identity which didn't go to on-prem AD, which came straight into Entra, the only two options, I mean, the ones that were there were like Workday native integration and then SuccessFactors, or you would use like Graph API and you would, provision them. So things have evolved a bit since then.
Oh yeah, things have evolved significantly. I remember, I think the first project I worked with you on was related to the success factors. In
Yes, yeah. One of
yes,
the very first sort of success factors, I think in
yes,
Australia, like
yes.
they were going all in with Entra, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting how that evolved as well, right? I think the core use case, as I said, was Graph API was not an option because Graph API will only create the identity in Entra. But you want to actually first create the identity in on-premises Active Directory. And that is where the provisioning agent technology took shape for the very first time. Okay, how do we pass the data coming from HR systems to AD in a secure manner? And that infrastructure component was first built, and which today, I think you also have covered this in your chat with Dhania earlier about how provisioning agent is also used by components like Cloud Sync today and even the on-prem provisioning part. Yes, so that provisioning agent was a key technology that enabled this scenario of sending over HR data from the HR sources to on-premises Active Directory.
Right. So tell me overall, like, what's the vision here with like there are all the different bits we see and releases coming and so on.
Yeah, I think the big picture is, yeah, we want to make sure that uh, customers should be able to bring in their identity data from any authoritative source, and it could also be multiple authoritative sources, for example. And once you bring in that data into Entra through the inbound connectors that we offer, then you have a mechanism to orchestrate the entire flow of this data using lifecycle workflows, using entitlement management for granting access, and finally being able to also provision that data to outbound systems, the thousands of whether it is on-premises applications or cloud applications. You should be able to do all of that within the Entra Suite and ID identity governance platform.
Right. Nice. So that's
And I
the
think
holistic.
in this, and the most important thing here is, if you take a look at the HR data premise here, right? It is the lifeblood of a successful IGA deployment. I mean, it is that beating heart, which is ensuring that, yeah, all your processes are fine-tuned and it's like you need HR data for everything, right? Whether it is you're defining conditional access policies that are going to restrict access based on the person's location or grant access based on the person's location, or even things like entitlement management, auto assignment rules. Or access review policies. If your manager is only set in HR system but not in Entra, it's of no use. So all these things are so foundational to a strong IGA modernization platform project, right? So that's where all of this comes together.
So tell me about that overall flow. Like what happens, let's say when you do a Workday setup, the Workday integration. You mentioned, coming into on-prem and all of that. How do the identities flow across and how do they end up in Entra? Is it like a direct thing into Entra? Does it go from Entra back to on-prem? What's sort of the high-level architecture flow
Yeah,
there?
that's a great point. So the the engine that is driving all of this together is the Entra provisioning service, which is available with every Entra tenant. You have the Entra provisioning service, and if you go into the enterprise applications portal landing page within the Entra portal, you will find a list of applications for which we support inbound provisioning as well as outbound provisioning. So the journey as a configuration journey for the IT admin starts from there, where the IT admin can configure the connectors. So let's say that they configure the Workday connector and provide the credentials and also establish connectivity to on-premises AD if they want to first provision to on-premises AD. And once that's done, so the Workday connector and SuccessFactors connectors are examples of what we call as pull connectors, right? Pull-based connectors. So they're actually pulling data from Workday and SuccessFactors. And then once they get the user information from these two systems, it then applies the mappings, which is again configured by the IT admin. And you can configure different kinds of attribute mappings. You can do a direct mapping, you can do a expression-based mapping, which allows you to transform the values while before sending it down to AD. And these mappings are applied, and then they go over to on-premises AD.
So all this is in the cloud, right? It's
This all
still
is happening, yes.
all in the cloud, nothing to deploy. You just go to and you all manage all of this from the Entra portal
Yes.
as well.
Yes, so all of this is managed from the Entra portal integration interface. You can define all those expression mapping functions out there. And once it's all there and you enable the job, right? So the first time it runs, it does what's called as a initial full sync. So at that moment, it is establishing that baseline of all identities which are present in the source, and then all identities which are in the target, and using the matching identifier that the IT admin defines. Like for example, employee ID is the most common matching identifier between source and HR source and your AD. And it will then see, okay, this user in the HR system maps to this specific user in Entra. So it builds that baseline metadata. And then from that point onwards, after that initial full sync is complete, then it goes into what's called as an incremental sync mode, where it runs every 40 minutes. It queries Workday, hey, do you have any changes for me? Okay, you have these changes, I'll process them now. Otherwise, if there are no changes, it just goes back to sleep. So that's how identities flow in a hybrid setup. They first flow to on-premises AD, and then after that, it relies on Cloud Sync or Entra Connect Sync to pull those identities into Entra ID. And then if you have, there is also a scenario called write back, HR write back, where there are certain attributes which are managed by IT teams, right? Like email or maybe phone number, and you want to write those back to your HR system. Then you have a different job that you can configure. Okay.
Right.
So that completes the whole flow from HR to AD, Entra, and then write back.
Right. So if you're having a hybrid setup, it is Entra that is pulling the identity, but it doesn't directly land in Entra. It still goes back to on-prem AD as the primary thing, and the provisioning agent does that bit. And then those identities flow the usual way through Connect Sync. They flow back from on-prem AD to the cloud. And I guess it gives a lot of options, right? Especially if you're migrating from something that is writing to on-prem AD already, you're just changing one place, and it's the rest of the flows all kept the same.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Meryl. So we have seen customers adopt, different starting points for this integration. Like I was really surprised that a lot of customers, even before configuring, let's say, the inbound flow from Workday or SuccessFactors to Entra, they actually configure the write back flow, where they write the email and phone number, which are managed in Entra ID, back to the HR system first.
Right.
And so it's really fascinating how they start their journey with write back. And then afterwards, once they're comfortable with this flow and they understand how it works, then they say, okay, let's enable this flow as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
I think a lot of them come from, a lot of folks come from on-prem, right, where they are managing the sync and the service, and there's a lot you need to tend to it, right, if it goes down and all of that. But now it's just Microsoft doing it. So there is sort of like a sense of losing control, but it's also a Microsoft managed and scaled service. So you can sleep easier knowing that it's a cloud service. You don't really need to be the person that gets called in the middle of the night, right? If the VM goes down and you need
yes.
to bring it up.
Oh, exactly, exactly. There have been so many instances when I know for folks from our team when they attend the Ignite or one of these customer conferences where someone comes and says, "Hey, thanks for building that integration. Because of that, I can get rid of my 6,000 line PowerShell script,
Right.
which was doing all this provisioning before."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that
Yes.
evolved, right? Over time, people just started writing all the
Yeah,
scripts.
yeah. They were writing so many scripts, and there is intricacy on managing different types of users also, right?
Yes.
Just expanding that the starting point of how would you like to configure the inbound provisioning services, right? So there's so many customers who have a mix of hybrid and cloud identities. So what I mean by that is hybrid identities are one that have an on-premises AD footprint, and cloud identities are the ones that are only cloud native. They don't have any on-prem AD footprint. So we actually provide two different provisioning connectors for every HR system, right? One that can provision to your on-premises AD and one that can just provision to Entra ID. So where this helps is think about, like, I think one of our most first customers who deployed this was in the retail industry, where for their frontline workers, they only needed to provision the cloud account. Okay. They didn't need any on-premises AD access, but for workers in their HQ headquarters, they needed both on-premises AD and cloud access. So they were able to configure both these flows.
Nice.
They first started with the frontline workers, and then afterwards expanded it to cover the corporate HQ workers.
Nice. Nice. So if it's cloud identities, then that just goes straight, right? The provisioning agent will
Yes.
just write them straight into Enter
Yeah,
ID.
there's no provisioning agent also there.
Okay. Oh, it's
It's
just
just
the
a connector
service.
which will just, yeah, the connector will directly write to,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
The provisioning agent comes in play only when
Only
the
for hybrid.
yeah,
Got it.
is involved.
Got it.
Yes.
Right. And you do all the fancy things like, I know there are lots of scripts people write to create the SAM account name and come up with unique names because the login ID has to be unique across all the users.
Yes.
And a lot of that's now in the mapping and things you support.
That's right. That's right. We do provide a very specific function for unique ID generation, where the IT admin can define a set of templates, like first try to create a username using first name dot last name. If that doesn't work, then create first name dot middle name, middle initial dot last name. So all these patterns is something which can be configured in the provisioning service. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, and that's part of those 8,000 line script that people would have written, right? To
Yes.
over time, they did first name, last name, that didn't work. Then they came up with their own way to make it unique, like
Yeah.
dot one,
Yes.
dot two, and you support all those different things.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Okay, so we've got all the identities in. And I mean, that's how it evolved, right? First, you had HR with Workday and then
Success
SuccessFactors.
factors. Yes. Yes.
And what happened after that? Like, what's the reason that made
Yes.
you like sort of build all these other
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
from?
I think so. So there were two things we can go into further, right? So once all these identities come into Entra, you want to solve the next problem of how do you provision these identities into other applications, and whether it is cloud applications or on-premises applications, right? And out there, we rely heavily upon SCIM as the provisioning standard for it's called System for Cross-Domain Identity Management. It's a standard which a lot of SaaS applications have already implemented on how to create accounts in these systems.
What happened before Skim? So I know there's a standard. Like what used to happen before there was Skim?
Yeah. So before Skim, every system probably had their own way of creating and managing users. It could be either creating the user in a database table, in an LDAP directory, or it could be just REST APIs or SOAP APIs, right? I think what the advent of Skim really helped standardize how different cloud systems are provisioned. And I think not just cloud systems, even on-premises apps now come with certain Skim interfaces that you can use too. So we were able to build one generic Skim connector and then use that, scale that to provision hundreds of other applications and systems that our customers use.
Before, like an app vendor would need to say, okay, I support Entra, then I support maybe Okta, then I support Ping, and they would need to write like different ways how they would get the data, and then it like things there would be small differences between each one. So an app dev team would spend their whole life building these connectors to whatever their customers were using and asking them to do. And the simpler thing for app devs is now they can just build one Skim, like like a contractual endpoint,
Yes,
and
yes,
anyone who provisions to the app can just call those APIs and
exactly.
it gets
Yeah, yeah,
provisioned.
yeah. I mean, it standardized not just the interaction, the protocol, how we send messages, but even it provided sample schemas,
Right,
the
the
standardized
attributes.
schemas actually for core user provisioning, enterprise user provisioning, and all of that. So
Yeah,
that
because
really,
yeah,
yeah.
everyone was doing stuff differently. I'm sure most supported the AD sort of fields because AD had like given. It's not first name, right? It's given
Yes,
name and surname, and you have
yes.
this weird set of attributes that someone
Oh,
thought of in the 90s and we
yeah,
used to
yeah.
the
I
today.
think, yeah, if I recall, yeah, consultants had a field day building all these connectors as
Right.
custom statement of works.
Yes. Yeah. Do
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same thing, but yeah, this
Yeah.
simplifies.
And in some cases, even I remember it was almost like screen scraping, and invoking some remote command to call that
Right.
integration point and all of that. Yes, yes.
Crazy.
It's
Yeah. I
excellent.
mean, not all
Yeah,
apps had APIs, right? So they
yeah.
would write these screen scraping tools.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay. So Skim helps in that way,
yeah.
simplifies it for the app devs, and also simplifies it for people like Entra, like to be able to say, okay, we support Skim. So any app that supports Skim, you can push identities to them. So usually, like when you do like just in time thing, a new user signs in through maybe Entra, but when they come in through the SAML claims, I can see the email address and the name. And I don't really need, as an app dev, to set up any syncing of identities and things like that, right? And what's the reason behind why can't they all just use the other way of you just getting it just in time through the SAML claim?
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, one of the key reasons why you do need Skim is that there is a whole bunch of attributes that you want to provision in a target application other than just first name and email. You want to provision their enterprise organizational data as well, right? Whether it is their department, division, cost center, all of that, because that may in turn decide like what access they have in that application.
Oh, right, right,
Plus, in addition to that, you want to also make sure that their entitlements, which could be the groups or permission sets in an application. So you want to provision that as well. So Skim has a mechanism to
oh, to get
provision
groups,
group
right,
membership and groups in the target application, which ultimately are required for secure access to that application. Yeah.
right. Yeah, that I mean, yeah. Now that I explain, it makes sense. So, like with AWS, right? Like I might be in a group, but someone removes me from the group in Entra.
Yes.
If AWS doesn't get it in time, then the person would still have access into the VMs and the accounts and the resources that they shouldn't have access to. So
Yes.
with the sort of scheme provisioning, it can push those changes and other like those entitlements into the application.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, so that was a big breakthrough for us once we had the generic skim capabilities embedded in the provisioning service. So we saw a huge number of applications being onboarded, not just as what we call as gallery apps or native integrations, but the model of bring your own application into Entra, yeah, really skyrocketed the adoption and usage.
Right.
So that was great. And then I think just expanding on that, right? So, but if you see our outbound provisioning ability to provision to outbound applications was like growing at an awesome scale. But when it came to inbound, okay, the irony is that not a lot of HR providers out there actually implement skim. Okay.
Right.
And yeah, and there are probably valid reasons for that. Like if you see a lot of HR data is is different in the sense that it's often effective dated. There is a date or time angle associated with when
Yes.
a hire becomes effective, when a termination becomes effective. There are a lot of other organizational constructs, position start date, end date. All these are not actually factored into the core skim schema. So if you see, there is a lot of fragmentation among the HR providers, specifically around how they have adopted or not adopted skim, or they have their own proprietary APIs. Okay, either REST-based APIs or SOAP-based APIs. So it became so after we implemented our Workday and SuccessFactors integration, we were kind of like staring into this abyss of, oh, what do we do now? What do we do next? Like which HR provider do we integrate with next? And given that every connector development is a significant engineering effort, right? So you want to make sure that okay, there are thousands of HR providers out there. Some are region specific, some
Right.
are specific industry vertical specific. Like how do you make sure that Entra as a platform can support a customer who uses any HR system, right? And it was an interesting exercise of how we then came up to this build this feature called API driven inbound provisioning. And I'm happy to share that story here for the audience, like why
Yeah.
we built it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, because so as I said, right, the key reason we embarked on this journey was that hey, there is no skim offering on the HR side consistently that we see. So when we first started the journey, it was what's it a truth-seeking exercise, a joint truth-seeking exercise, and we wanted to reach out to all our customers, partners. So we conducted this user research, and in that user research, we asked them three questions. Hey, we want to build something that can help you integrate with any HR system of your choice. Which of these options would you prefer? Do you want a CSV based integration? Do you want a SQL based integration? So you stage the HR data into a SQL table and then we pull it from there. And then the third one, do you want an API based integration? Okay, very, very simple options to
Right.
choose
Yeah.
from. And some of this you can see the by the flavor of questions,
Yeah.
we were trying to cater to a broad set of customers.
Yes.
Like I think if you go back to early 2000s or so on, it all started with CSV files floating between
Yes.
HR systems and
Yeah.
your identity providers. And then somewhere it evolved that down the line to, or instead of CSV files floating around, let me stage it in a SQL table and let me pick it up from there. And then, of course, the modern API-based integration. And the response that we got was it was split across all of them. There were some who were, and it was the split was also reflective of a region's preference. Like in US, for some reason, there was a stronger preference for CSV versus Australia, which preferred API-based integration. I mean, it just showed the variance in probably the HR systems that were there in these regions.
Yeah, and CSVs are like they'll sort of never die. I feel like even in finance, I know I used to work in a fintech startup, and it's all driven by CSVs. Like they send this whole bunch of CSVs with all the transactions and that happen for the day, and it's all the plumbing is all end of the day just CSV files, and they
Yeah.
have Perl scripts and everything running that do that. So it does make
Oh, yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's not going away anytime soon. I agree. Yeah. So we got this survey results, and as I said, they were split. But then we saw an underlying trend that even for customers who had picked the CSV or the SQL option, in the comments they had said that, hey, we are using this mechanism today, so it will help us. But in future, we want to go to an API based approach. So that was like an aha moment. Oh, okay. So there's definitely a tilt towards API-based provisioning. Of course, given all the advantages it offers, right? So then we asked, now once we said, okay, API based option, then someone in the room, like, and we are constantly learning. I think that's the great part of product management. Like you're actually learning from customers and partners. And then we saw with respect to the API option also, people were curious to know, hey, is it going to be a pull based API or a push based API integration? So what that means is that is Entra going to offer a generic endpoint where you can just push all the data? Or are you going to give an generic connector that can reach out to any API and pull the data from there? Okay. I think this maps to some of the connectors that legacy IGA systems provided. It's called the generic web services connector, which can talk to any REST API endpoint or a SOAP endpoint. I think there's a flavor of that available in MIM as well, right? So that was the question. Hey, are you going to provide us a generic push-based connector or a pull-based connector? So we actually said, okay, let's ask the same question to the survey participants and see what they say. And there we were surprised that, yeah, most of them actually said, hey, I prefer having a generic push-based endpoint. That was where the majority of them were leaning towards. And there were a couple of reasons for this, right? One is that having a generic push-based endpoint, API endpoint, it allows customers to do a lot of pre-processing before sending the data.
Right.
So they can front load all that processing, because ultimately I think the quality of data getting into your HR system matters, into your identity system matters, right?
Yeah.
So it's garbage in, garbage out. So you want
Correct.
to
Yeah. So they want to clean out, or sometimes they don't want some of those even going into the Entra, right? Like they have various scenarios where they don't want the data included even. So
Yes. Because there are sometimes like variances in department names or even job titles.
Right.
They're not consistent across the board. So they want to do some of that cleanup before sending us the data. So that was one reason, and then the second reason was also the HR team is in more control of the data that is being sent versus depending on a system that is just pulling data. Yeah, I don't know what you're pulling from me.
Yes. Right.
And
Yeah.
there is this tension between HR and IT teams. Hey, show me what you're getting from the HR system.
Right.
I know HR data is a gold mine of data. Everyone wants access to it. So this gives that control. That was one of the reasons, as I said, yeah. The first reason being you want to pre-process and clean the data. The second reason is that HR is in more control. And then there's the third one was interesting, where they also wanted to merge data from different sources. Okay. And they could have multiple sources actually creating the core employee profile, and then they want to send that. So that was another major use case. So, and yeah, the pull model fell short of these expectations, right? Because then you would have to have some inline processing doing something, or some inline hooks that are doing processing and so on. So that's where we ended up. Okay, then this likes there's a clear verdict here that we have to go and build this generic API ingestion endpoint, which supports not only the hybrid identities but also cloud identity provisioning, right? So that's how we decided. Okay, let's do this. And then the second point we had to address was that again the key thing was here we're going to process data in batches. There's going to be a like some customers will probably send data to this endpoint every night. Some are going to say, I'm going to send every 3 hours. Someone's going to say every 1 hour. So we wanted to make sure it's capable of bulk processing in bulk. And that's the reason we decided to make it asynchronous. In the sense you send all the data, and then afterwards the provisioning job, which is within that provisioning service, it will process all of that data, and then you can check the results.
So what's the difference? I mean, Graph API existed at this
Yeah.
point, right? And a lot of people were already calling Graph API to create identities and use that as a vehicle for integrating and bringing in identities. So why what are the things the provisioning engine does that you don't really get with the Graph API?
Oh, that's such an awesome question, right? Because we grappled with some of these questions also in that early design phases. So here are some reasons, right, where the provisioning API endpoint differs from the normal Graph API for user management. So the first thing starts with the permissions, right? So if you want to access the MS Graph user APIs, you need to have user read write all permissions if you want to update all those attributes. And then there are specific granular permissions for other attributes because it is giving direct access to update a user in Entra. Okay. This one is actually doesn't require the user read write all, but there is a much more lower permission called synchronization upload, because this is only allowing the HR system to upload data to the provisioning endpoint. It's not directly impacting the user in Entra. You see, so there is actually it's almost like staging the data, and then the provisioning job is then applying the mappings to update the user eventually. Okay. So in this model, the IT admin actually retains control on which users get processed, and also which attributes of the users are updated or impacted. Right? If you go with the standard graph approach, then one, the change is immediate.
Yes, yeah.
There's no way for the IT admin to even know or control like what data is coming in. And then the second point is that there's no control the IT admin has on even which attributes get updated. If it is user read write all, everything is fair
Everything,
game.
right? Like things like you might have apps, like I built apps which wrote to custom, like, extension attributes that control the licensing information and so on.
Yes.
And if an HR vendor comes and I give them access, they might mess those things up, and it could cause on-flow effects into the licensing and the various other things that we build on top of Entra.
Yes.
And today there is no way in Graph to say I only give you access to these fields. So that's not possible with Graph API or permissions.
Yeah.
So it will be those are things that the provisioning engine sort of protects.
Yes. So now you actually just send the data, whatever you want, and then it is the configuration done by the IT admin actually determines what gets processed and what gets skipped. Okay. So that is the most important change. And the second one is that it is allowing you to update users in your connected on-premises AD. You don't get that with Graph.
Yes. Yeah.
Graph is just updating cloud-only native users. Like if you have a hybrid identity, it is locked for editing as well.
Right.
So this one actually addresses that key requirement of majority of customers who are using on-premises AD connected to Entra.
Right. And all correct. And your rules that you define for the provisioning, the mapping, all those get uniformly applied, regardless of whether the identity goes on-prem or to the cloud. You have that central plane that you manage.
Yes,
that flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Right. Yeah, so that's the big difference. And yeah, honestly, I mean, we were so after all this research and this joint truth-seeking exercise, we were really fascinated by how rapidly the adoption grew of API-driven provisioning. We have, I think, in the last 1 year or so, we have published the Oracle HCM integration that leverages this. There is Rippling and Darwinbox as HR providers who have adopted this integration.
Nice.
And I think this has opened up opened up the provisioning engine also to other system integration partners who have built their own offerings in this space, like connecting niche or region-specific HR vendors to Entra ID. Like for example, I think there is this popular HR system in Netherlands, AFAS, FS. There's the system integration partner who has built integration just for ingesting data from this system, AFS,
Nice.
into Entra. So it's opened the doors,
Yes. Yeah.
really to players. And the more identities get into Entra ID, and then now they are ready to take advantage of all the advanced features that we have, whether it is entitlement management,
Right.
lifecycle workflows, or even just access reviews, which depend on having the right HR data in place. So making sure that the right access gets reviewed by the right person.
Nice. And I know even for the people who ask for CSVs, I think you also did something where you
Yes.
can give you sort of plug that in as well, right? Through
Yes,
this.
yes. That was an interesting
Yeah.
story too. Yeah. So the idea was, yeah, we wanted to implement something that provides us the maximum leverage or the highest leverage, right? And we know that there's a set of customers, as you said, who still depend on the CSV based processing. So working with our CXC team, we actually built PowerShell based script that's called CSV to skim. I think it's probably the first CSV to skim translation tool that we built. So you can provide any CSV file, and we'll generate a skim compliant payload that is ready for sending to that API endpoint. Okay. And that's also used by a lot of our customers, CSV to skim PowerShell script. And also, we also built a similar logic apps template as well,
Oh,
which
okay.
allows customers to just deploy the logic apps in their tenant, and
Right.
it can
So
pull
it can
data.
run all in the cloud, right? Like maybe
Data all
you put
running.
in a storage account, the CSV, and Logic App
Yes,
can pick it up. So you don't have anything on-prem
yes,
scripts
yes.
and all that running.
Yeah, yeah. So you can just put it in a Azure file storage. Yep, and
Nice.
the logic apps will pick it up from there.
So you have all the options. Too many options, right? So you
Yeah.
need to now decide which way you use to
Yes,
bring.
yes. You want to use PowerShell, we have it for you. If you want to use Logic Apps, go party with it. If you want to use Power Automate, let's do it. And I think, yeah, I'd love to see, Meryl, if you will build an agentic integration.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's coming. Today, the agents would struggle with the volume. I think
Yeah.
when we talk of agents and AI for a lot of things, today the catch is they can't deal with large volumes of data, right? They're good with like small and text, and the token limits are the problem today. But I can
Yes.
easily see in a few years' time when like Google already does, I think 1 million tokens or something can be
Yes.
sent in one request. Is that the latest on the provisioning engine?
For the latest, if you ask me, I think just this week we announced or published the general availability capability for custom security attribute provisioning using the same inbound provisioning
Okay.
platform, right? So just to cover that a little bit, just expand upon that.
Yeah.
So, custom security attributes are special extensions within an Entra ID tenant, which allow you to store sensitive or confidential data. So, think about like things like, okay, if you want to store uh, the specific applicant ID or a leave reason, for example, or maybe an employment related aspect that is confidential.
Yeah.
Okay,
You don't want
so
everyone knowing, right? Like what is their level, like
yeah, things
job
like
level or job
yeah,
code.
yeah,
So we
or
had extension attributes before, right? And that's what everyone, like even in Connect Sync, when you configure some attributes, they get created as extension attributes.
yes,
But the problem with that is anyone can see, anyone in the directory can query and see those attributes. So custom security attributes sort of solves that issue by making sure there's a lot of permissioning
Yes.
available on that.
Yeah,
And
you need a set of permissions, and they are they are stored in a more secure fashion. Like even global administrator doesn't have access to it, right? You need a very specific role, attribute assignment administrator to assign those attributes. And there is a different graph API endpoint also. Like you don't get it as part of the standard get user API call. Yeah, so customers are actually using this to store sensitive attributes like clearance level, pay grade, pay level. So all of that information. And this is then later on also used in lifecycle workflows. Like let's say you are assigned to a stealth project that no one should know, then you can actually use that attribute in your lifecycle workflows to grant access to a
nice.
resource that only members in that stealth project need access to.
Right. Nice. It ties in nicely with all of the Entra capabilities, right?
Yes. And I think one of the first use cases of custom security attributes was this attribute-based access control to Azure resources,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that the challenge with the adoption of custom security attributes was that there was no bulk mechanism to set this on a per user basis, right? So that's where this capability was in public preview for the last 6 months, and it just went into GA this week. So yeah, what this allows you to do is now you can pull those custom security attributes from any HR source, whether it is Workday, SuccessFactors, or through API-driven provisioning, and it now shows up in that mapping panel where you map the normal
Nice.
attributes. Now you do need a special role to discover custom security attributes in the tenant, and once you discover that, you can map it, and it will securely set that attribute. Like you won't even see that attribute in the log files. It's redacted. And now it is available for all your other advanced governance and compliance scenarios too.
Nice. So this is a neat way to bring HR sensitive data, which you couldn't before
Correct.
because the AD was sort of read available for everyone, like in on-prem, in Entra
Yes.
attributes. So now you can map those HR sensitive data to custom security attributes and push that through.
Yes. And with the split provisioning capability that we provide, right? So even if you are a hybrid customer, for example, who has an on-premises AD footprint, so you can actually set up, let's say Workday is your HR system, you can set up a job from Workday to AD, which is writing all those normal attributes, non-confidential ones, to on-premises AD. And just for these sensitive attributes, you can set up the Workday to Entra ID job, which is provisioning the custom security attributes. So
Nice.
you can actually, yeah. So it's got a much more broader range of
So you
usage.
can do split provisioning as well. So you can
Yes.
write them to the cloud identity attributes.
Yeah. That's a very powerful use case. We have seen customers use it for, like you mentioned, like there are certain directory extension attributes that are only in the cloud. So you can actually just set those directly from your HR system, and for anything that's AD dependent, you set up another job. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, for me, I deal a lot more in the app side of things. So this is all like new stuff for me. And that's the thing, right? Even for people listening, Entra is such a big space. Like it's really hard to master everything. And like you can know what's happening.
Yes.
But to the level of every feature, it's really hard to keep track and be across them. Which is why I started the whole newsletter thing. I was like, I need one place where I can see, all the new features and capabilities and what people are playing around with and learning from and sharing. So that helped. Cool. We are getting to the top of the hour. I know there are lots of customers who are thinking of migration. Like I have people pinging me saying, "Oh, we just did a migration," and they want to share their story. we spoke about earlier in the Entra chat itself, Okta migrations and other identity governance solutions and so on. What is your advice for someone who's thinking of, migrating to Entra and using Entra ID governance and provisioning? How would you recommend they sort of approach it? Or even if they have this idea, like how should they go about exploring this whole concept, and where do they start?
Yeah, yes, that's a great point. Yeah, so in terms of how should customers approach IGA modernization or upgrade project, right? I think the good thing is that it doesn't have to be a big bang approach, right? You can approach it in a phased manner. And I think the beauty of the tools that or the capabilities we provide within Entra is that you can actually have different starting points, but you will reach your goal eventually.
Nice.
Now, the
Yeah.
order in which you want to do things, of course, you do want to. So if you're already getting your data from HR to AD and then afterwards AD to Entra, you can still continue to that model. And within Entra, you can start seeding the provisioning integrations to your outbound applications. You can, in fact, even start using governance capabilities like lifecycle workflows for your joiner scenarios. Like you don't need to have an HR integration tied to Entra for that to happen.
Right.
Like even if you are in that hybrid world,
Yeah.
say your legacy IGA, whether it is MIM or any other tool, it is provisioning to your on-premises AD. You have all those necessary attributes
Right.
of you're
Nice.
hydrating all the manager, organizational data, start date, end date, and all of that is coming into Entra. You can just get started with Entra ID governance, with lifecycle workflows, implement your joiner, mover, lever scenarios. You can scope it by department or by an organizational unit, cost center by cost center,
Right.
and approach it in a phased manner. So you
Nice.
could run your legacy IGA and your modern IGA in parallel, uh, and
Nice.
then gradually move over things.
I
I
think
think
that's a
that's,
very unique thing
yeah.
that Entra has, right? Because I know I've heard like some of my customers do, like they're running like a 2-year project, and then they have
Yes.
this one night where they are like, or one weekend where they're doing this huge thing to switch
Cut
over
over.
to the new
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
Then
Yes.
they run into some issues, they have to postpone it, or they do it and then they have so many issues and they revert. Like I've heard all of those stories with identity and Entra, because they already have the identities in there.
Yes.
You can start in you can have you have completely like a different set of things that you can do, and it's easy for funding as well, I guess, for businesses to say, this year let me do this thing, and then the next year do that, and slowly do a very low risk approach to
Yes.
this, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's because there's a lot of new patterns emerging, integration patterns emerging, and it's offering. We are listening actively to feedback from system integration partners, customers, and yeah, we'd love to support you in that journey, offering maximum flexibility.
Nice, nice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chetan. This has been really eye-opening for me. I learned a lot of new things
Yes.
myself. And I knew when I got you on that I was going to learn something new, and I certainly did. But this is a whole area of Entra that people specialize in just, identity governance and IAM.
Yes.
From a skill perspective, there are consultants I know who do only this. Like they don't even look at conditional access or anything else. They're just doing identity and IAM, right? And that's a whole skill area on its own, and a growth area as well from career opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
It was great talking to you, Meryl, and continue the awesome work you're doing with Entra Chat. It's really encouraging to see so many customers sharing what they're doing, partners and others also coming on this channel. I'm a big fan of it.
Yes, I'm a big fan. I'm lucky because I get to talk to all of you great folks who are actually in the front end doing all this. Cool. Thanks so much, Chetan. I'm sure we'll have you on again because I know you do so many other things and there are lots of things we couldn't talk today that you're working on. So we'll have you in another post-Ignite world to talk
Looking
about
forward to it.
all
Yeah.
the things you're cooking up right now.
Yes.
Cool. Cheers.